Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call the regular meeting of Council to order. Our clerk today will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. I would ask, in light of the agenda, for a procedural motion to proceed in camera. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 24th regular and last meeting of the current council. I'd like to first recognize we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of council will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. The question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left for agenda items only. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. Members have been granted the authority to join meetings electronically, but we are all here tonight in full color, I might add. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items, Ms. Gurry, and we do have one.
Yes, Your Worship, we actually have two. The first one is agenda item 12A, remedial action requirement, request for reconsideration for 5 Durham Street. That is being removed from tonight's agenda and will be coming forward to a future agenda. And the second item is a correction to the public hearing minutes from September 29th, page 5, where the referral for the bylaw for RA 479, the motion to defer bylaw 4500.200, opposed has Councillor Brown, and it should have Councillors Brown and Bonner opposed to the deferral of that. So that needs to be corrected, and that's it, Your Worship.
Very good, thank you. Then a motion for adoption of the agenda as amended. Moved Councillor Bonner, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Bonner, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. I have an interesting, I would like to think it's interesting anyway, Mayor's report tonight, a little fuller than usual. And I'm going to start off with the acknowledgement that I am a man of my word when it comes to making wagers. As many of you notice, I am adorned with the jersey of the winning Penticton V's hockey team, as opposed to my patriotic members of council who are all adorned with the Nanaimo Clippers jersey. Back in May, I made a bet with Mayor John Vasilaki of Penticton that his team was going to lose to our Nanaimo Clippers, and the bet was essentially that we would each give $100 to a charity of our choice. If we lost, we would wear the jersey of the opposing team for a full day, including the council meeting. In my case, I would provide him with enough Nanaimo bars to satisfy his council's needs, and he in turn would provide a bottle of wine, which he did regardless after I delivered the Nanaimo bars to him. So I am here tonight dressed in shame, wearing the Penticton V's jersey. And I want to take this opportunity as mayor on behalf of this fine council to say we're all behind the Clippers this season. We're looking forward to them succeeding, notwithstanding the awesome team that are the Penticton V's. And I'd like to call up the Director of Business Operations for the Nanaimo Clippers, Rob Hunter, to say a couple of words at the podium if you could. Mr. Hunter, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Council and Your Worship. On behalf of the organization, our sincerest apologies to you. I would like to point out that in the first round of the playoffs, when we swept the Surrey Eagles, the mayor of Surrey did not take our bet to wear a jersey. The mayor of Chilliwack, when we swept them in the second round of the playoffs, did not take our bet to wear our jersey. And in the third round of the playoffs, when we once again swept a team from Langley, their mayor did not wear our jersey. So I thank you for honoring your wager with the mayor of Penticton, showing that Nanaimo is a community that stands by their word and does sacrifice, as you have so far here tonight. And I would like to also thank you for the important message that you're sending to the young people of Nanaimo. Anyone who watches sports these days on television knows that there's a particular type of commercial that is inundating our youth and our young people and our children. And you demonstrating tonight the dangers of sports gambling hopefully sends a positive message about knowing your limit and playing within it. And, well, thank you for looking ridiculous this evening.
Thank you. I'm going to suggest you come down to the front and I'll meet you and we'll shake hands and we have a photographer available.
We would also like to invite Your Worship and Council to our game Friday night against the Surrey Eagles. Surrey and Nanaimo are currently in a battle for first place in the Coastal Conference Championship as we look to defend that Coastal Conference Championship this year and hopefully do better in the Fred Page Cup this year.
Now, I do have a few other items to report on. As many of you know, with the remarkable weather we've had, depending on your perspective, if you're a growing thing, it hasn't been very pleasant. The city has had to extend watering restrictions to October 31st. As you know, they've extended the drought level 4 conditions in central Vancouver Island, and so we followed the lead in that as well. I also want to report that the city acknowledges and welcomes the expert report on repeat and violent offenders. Communities across BC have urgently pressed government for help to deal with criminal activity and public disorder from a small group of repeat offenders. Their efforts spurred the Attorney General to commission 2 healthcare and criminal justice system experts to investigate and prepare a report. The report, A Rapid Investigation into Repeat Offending and Random Stranger Violence in British Columbia, authored by Dr. Amanda Butler and ex-police chief Doug Lepard, calls for significant changes to criminal justice and healthcare approaches, amongst other recommendations. The government particularly acknowledged the work of mayors from 13 municipalities, including myself, members of the BC Urban Mayors Caucus, who have been lobbying and working with the government for some time to ensure that they understand that this is a serious issue of concern to everybody. And as I have said many, many times in this council chamber and to the media, it is the single biggest source of concern and complaint expressed to me as mayor and to members of this council, and has been for a long time. So we are extremely pleased to see the report and hope that given that it was commissioned by the former Attorney General, who is I haven't been watching the news today. I don't think he's been actually officially sworn in as Premier yet, but will be very shortly, that those commitments will be carried out. The election results I will leave to last, but I will talk a little bit about the emergency alert testing that takes place on October 25th. To cap off its annual Emergency Preparedness Month, the City of Nanaimo will be sending a test alert through its emergency notification system, Voyant Alert, on October 25th at 10:25. Registered users will receive a test alert via SMS text, phone call, email, or as a notification through the app, depending on what type of messaging each individual is registered for. I expressed also back on October 19th on behalf of Council condolences to the family, friends, and co-workers of Burnaby RCMP Constable Shaylin Yang, who was killed in the line of duty on October 18th. I think it's important for us to recognize that Constable Yang was performing her job in a professional way, trying to reach out to someone who, based on news reports, has clearly led a very troubled life recently. And I'm reminded that across this community every day, members of the RCMP, our firefighters, paramedics, mental health workers, and others go out every day trying to assist and help those who are in terrible condition and living very vulnerable lives, if you will. And so we're reminded by the tragic death of Shaylin Yang how much we owe to them who do this every day on our behalf. Finally, I want to take this opportunity to just say a couple of words about the recent election. There will be an opportunity on the inaugural council meeting, the new council, at 7 o'clock on November the 7th at the conference center for the 3 councillors I'm about to mention in particular to say a few words if they wish, and they're welcome to say something tonight if they wish as well. As many of you know, Councillor Turley chose not to run again this time. Councillors Bonner and Councillors Martman, who have likewise served for the last 4 years with all of us fresh faces, with the exception of Councillors Thorpe, our senior member of council with 2 full terms, and Councillor Armstrong for 1.5. They served this community well. They were respectful. They helped restore the reputation of this community in terms of its public behavior and its attitude to its citizens, and I believe showed the kind of maturity that is to be admired and respected when one seeks and is lucky enough to have public office. So I will say more on another occasion, but I do want to say tonight to all 3 of them, you cannot do this kind of work for 4 years and not develop respect and affection where it's merited. And the truth is that respect and affection from all of us to them has certainly been merited. For those of us who will continue on, and on behalf of the City of Nanaimo, I just want to express my very sincere thanks to each of you who took the task on, performed well, and have helped make, I believe, without any modesty whatsoever, you've helped make this a better city today than it was 4 years ago. So thank you. I much appreciate it. On that note then, let's get down to what is the last evening of business for this council. Unless I see someone wishing to say something and I don't. We have nothing to rise and report on, Ms. Gurry, from the in-camera meeting. We have no presentations. We have committee minutes, which are just for receipt. And I would ask for a motion for adoption of the consent items. Moved Councillor Hemmens, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Tonight we have under item 11, under delegations unrelated to agenda items, a presentation from Dave Hammond, who's here to thank council for their service. Mr. Hammond, no stranger to these chambers. Nice to see you tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mayor Krogh, councillors, good evening. You're adorned, I don't even know what words to use because they're usually with slimmer, younger people, so no offense. I'm here this evening to personally thank you for your service to our community during your closing term in office. 4 years ago, Nanaimo City Council was in disarray. Collectively, you stepped forward and brought calmness and cooperation to this chamber. In particular, the leadership of Mayor Krogh was instrumental in this turnaround. Governing while experiencing issues such as COVID, mental health, addictions, homelessness, and yes, bike lanes, has been challenging. Much good work has been done and more awaits the next council. Councillors Bonner, Martman, and Turley will not be members of the next council. I thank them for their service and wish them well. The rest of council will return for the next 4 years. You will be joined by 3 newcomers. In hockey talk, I think they're called rookies. This council has built a solid foundation of cooperation and partnership in the community. The next council must take the opportunity to build on this foundation and accomplish much in moving our community forward. Thank you.
Mr. Hammond, thank you very much. Very kind words. Much appreciated. Council have any questions for the delegation? I suspect not. Item 12A has been removed as per the earlier discussion. The next item is 12B, illegal construction, 2005 Boxwood Road. And Mr. Lindsay, you're going to introduce that.
Thank you, Worship. Good evening, Council. As you mentioned, we're here this evening to seek your support with respect to a remedial action order for 2005 Boxwood Road. This is a property the Council may be familiar with, as you did agree to put a notice on title back in the fall of 2020. And it's been a property that staff have been working with since 2019. Unfortunately, at this point, we've been unable to bring the property into compliance, and we're seeking your support in this remedial action order. Happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Lindsay? Seeing none, Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move, excuse me, that Council issue a remedial action order at 2005 Boxwood Road pursuant to Section 72 and 73 of the Community Charter, and to direct staff or its authorized agents to take action in accordance with Section 17 of the Community Charter without further notice and at the owner's expense if the said remedial action is not undertaken within 30 days of Council's resolution. And I direct that remedial action consist of removing the structures constructed on each side of the main building without a permit.
Thank you. And before I proceed, I should note, is there anyone here wishing to speak with respect to this matter? Not seeing. Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is 12C, Appeals Procedure and Housekeeping Amendment Bylaws. Ms. Gurry, please.
Thank you, Worship. So there are 7 bylaws before you this evening that, as you were forewarned earlier in October, at the start of October, staff revised Officer Designation and Delegation of Authority bylaw, and staff noted that there would be several other bylaws that were coming forward because with that amendment came a number of other amendments necessary. And because of amendments requiring an amendment to a bylaw, staff has taken the opportunity to make minor amendments to the next bylaws that you will be seeing on your agenda this evening. And this is to ensure that the right reconsideration process going forward, this bylaw, is conducted in a consistent manner. And staff has also, for that reason, brought forward a single comprehensive appeals procedure bylaw that outlines the procedure for how to reconsider matters and how they will be addressed in the future. So that bylaw was adopted on October the 3rd, 2022. And so this next step in the process is to do housekeeping amendments to the affected bylaws by including a provision that points to the appeals procedure bylaw. There are 7 such bylaws, as I mentioned, that require this provision. And given that council must consider these amendments by bylaw, like I mentioned, staff took the opportunity to address other housekeeping matters. So Ms. Robertson, who speaks way better to this than I am, is here if you have any questions, as well as Mr. LaBerge. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gurry. Any questions for Ms. Robertson? Everyone's had a chance to read the material. Sorry, Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure if my question is on this one or not, but it's to do with the bylaw to amend property maintenance and standards bylaw. Is that where we are right now?
Yes, Your Worship, that will be coming up. So if it's a question about the report, it is mentioned. It's number 5,
Okay.
The 5th bylaw that you'll be giving readings to.
My question is under 8.3, prior to the expiration of 14 days from the date the letter directing that the contravention be rectified, my question is the communication sent electronically or by regular mail? And if it's regular mail, I'm a little concerned that 14 days may or may not be long enough.
Your Worship, I'll do my best to answer this, but as I said, Ms. Robertson is here, and I believe Mr. LaBerge as well. But when there is a notice provided, and in these matters, the bylaw officers hand deliver these notices, so they aren't sent via mail and or email. They are hand delivered by bylaw officers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Not seeing any other questions. Councillor Hemmons, if you want to make the first many.
Thank you. I move that Sewer Regulation and Charge Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 2496.36, a bylaw to include a provision that points to the appeals procedure bylaw and other housekeeping amendments, be given first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Sewer Regulation and Charge Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 2496.36, be given second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. Any discussion? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that listening to Mr. Hammond talk about bringing stability to council, and here I am reading the how to appeal a sewer regulation in a hockey jersey, and I'm questioning if he's actually correct.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I move that sewer regulation and charge amendment bylaw 2022 number 2496.36 be given third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is the flood prevention amendment bylaw. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I move that flood prevention amendment bylaw 2022 number 5105.01, a bylaw to include a provision that points to the appeals procedure bylaw and other housekeeping amendments be given first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that flood prevention amendment bylaw 2022 number 5101.01 be given second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And I move that flood prevention amendment bylaw 2022 number 5101.01 be given third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next, item 3, Waterworks Rate and Regulation Amendment Bylaw. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I move that Waterworks Rate and Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2022 number 7004.19, a bylaw to include a provision that points to the appeals procedure bylaw and other housekeeping amendments be given first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Waterworks Rate and Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2022 number 7004.19 be given second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And I move that Waterworks Rate and Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2022 number 7004.19 be given third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Item 4, the Management and Protection of Trees Amendment Bylaw. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I move that Management and Protection of Trees Amendment Bylaw 2022 number 7126.02, a bylaw to include a provision that points to the appeals procedure bylaw and other housekeeping amendments be given first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Management and Protection of Trees Amendment Bylaw 2022 number 7126.02 be given second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you.
I move that Management and Protection of Trees Amendment Bylaw 2022 number 7126.02 be given third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Item 5, Property Maintenance and Standards Amendment Bylaw. Councillor Hemmens, please.
Thank you. I move that Property Maintenance and Standards Bylaw 2022 number 7242.02, a bylaw to include a provision that points to the appeals procedure bylaw and other housekeeping amendments be given first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Property Maintenance and Standards Bylaw 2022 number 7242.02 be given second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And I move that Property Maintenance and Standards Bylaw 2022 number 7242.02 be given third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Item 6, the Business License Amendment Bylaw. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I move that Business License Amendment Bylaw 2022 number 7318.01, a bylaw to include a provision that points to the appeals procedure bylaw be given first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And I move that Business License Amendment Bylaw 2022 number 7318.01 be given second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Pardon me, any discussion? No? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Business License Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7318.01, be given third reading.
Seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. And the last one is 7, Chauffeurs Regulation Amendment Bylaw. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I move that Chauffeurs Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7319, a bylaw to include a provision that points to the Appeals Procedure Bylaw, be given first reading.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Chauffeurs Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7319, be given second reading.
Seconded Councillor Martman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Chauffeurs Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 7319, be given third reading.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We're on to D, Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment Bylaw, Housekeeping Amendments. Again, Ms. Gurry, you're going to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So again, when drafting amendments to the bylaws that utilize the reconsideration process through the Appeals Procedure Bylaw, staff noticed that some of the section numbers in the Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw did not match up with the corresponding regulatory bylaw. As such, staff are bringing forward a bylaw amendment to correct the reference to those sections.
Any questions for Ms. Gurry? Not seeing any. Councillor Hemmens, please.
Thank you. I move that Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw 2022, number 7159.17, a bylaw to correct references to bylaw provisions and address fine inconsistencies, be given first reading.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I move that Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw 2022, number 7159.17, be given second reading.
Seconded Councillor Martman. Discussion. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I was just looking at.
Sorry, there we go.
Where did it go? Oh, hang on here. I just had it and just lost it again. It's the point where if somebody tampers with the water system and then it's brought into repair, is the city responsible for repair or is the individual?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Armstrong, is it in the bylaw, Councillor Armstrong? What section?
I'm just trying to find it again. 31.1.
Ms. Robertson.
Oh,
And 29 as well.
Yeah, through your worship, that would be a cost to, the cost to repair or reinstate would be at the person who tampered with it.
Pardon me?
It wouldn't be the city's cost.
No, my question is who is responsible for the repair? Can they just get anybody they want, or does the city have to have approved people that do the repairs?
Your Worship, from the water, the city's water to the house is the responsibility of the homeowner to hire someone
You said
to
the
repair.
city.
Mr. Sims.
Thanks, Your Worship. No, it would, the repair to the city system would be done by city forces
Thank you.
at the cost of the
Thank
person
you.
that tampered. Yeah.
And that would be the same for tampering as well, correct? If there was tampering done and there were repairs, it would be city crews again and then billed to the homeowner?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Very good. If no further discussion or questions, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you. I move that Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw 2022, number 7159.17, be given third reading.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. On to item 12E, Downtown Vandalism Relief Grant. Mr. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Worship, and there is no bylaw associated with this item, so we can give Councillor Hemmens a break. This is a recommendation, Your Worship, that came, and Council is going to be familiar with this, came specifically out of the Downtown Nanaimo Community Safety Action Plan. And that plan was received and endorsed by Council in the spring, and it had a number of initiatives, including the establishment of community safety officers, additional cleaning in the downtown, park attendants, and this item before you this evening, a vandalism relief a vandalism relief fund. Specifically, we're here tonight to ask for your support in entering into a service agreement with the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce, who will manage this grant program for us. And I just ask if under the first attachment, which is the actual agreement, there's a plan showing the outline of the area. Thanks. So this is the general area that we describe as the downtown, Comox Road up to Pine Street. This is the area that the commercial businesses will be eligible under this program to be administered. So as you can see here, it actually overlaps two business improvement areas and other business associations in the downtown. So rather than have it managed through the BIA, one of the main reasons to go to the chamber was because of this area, and they've agreed to manage this program for us. So, Your Worship, the agreement itself, if you'll recall, it had $50,000 in funding for 2022, and then there's $30,000 in each subsequent year. It is a 5-year program, but it is eligible to be canceled by the city at any time with 30 days notice. There is money in your budget for the first 3 years to support the program. The subsequent years will be considered as part of your upcoming financial plan consideration. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. In order, Councillors Armstrong, Hemmens, and Thorpe.
Thank you. And my question is through to staff. One of my concerns is that we have lots of other areas in town that have extreme vandalism and graffiti as well. What is a mechanism for them to access any city dollars to support, or is there one at this time?
So Your Worship, through Your Worship to Councillor Armstrong, so at this time we have no other similar vandalism relief grant program. So this will be the first of its kind, and it again came specifically a recommendation of the downtown safety plan. But at this point, it would be limited to businesses operating within this area and until such time the council gave further direction or established subsequent programs.
Follow up. Is it possible then, if we do have other businesses, and I'll refer to Terminal Park area where they've seen a lot of vandalism as well as up in the north end, that they could come to council and request this, and then it could be done at that particular time on a one-off, or wait to see how this program plays out?
It's through Your Worship, again, to Councillor Armstrong, it's obviously more beneficial to have an actual program which has parameters in it. Council does have limited ability. You have a very small general grant program that allows you some flexibility throughout the year to provide grants on a one-off situation. But generally, if the intent is to provide something more permanent, our recommendation is always to create a separate grant program such as we're proposing this evening.
Just as a follow-up, my concern is that we passed a bylaw, and I think I was the only one opposed, where we would be fining people who didn't clean up their graffiti, whatever. So the rest of the city is going to be penalized for this, yet we will pay for the downtown core. So for me, I can't support this unless it engages all businesses and homeowners, because I think it's unfair to the rest of the citizens that are paying for this and aren't able to get the same money. And at the same time, if we see graffiti and somebody complains, then they're fined. Whereas down here, they're not fined and the city actually pays for them to fix it up. So for me, I just can't support it because I don't think it's fair to all businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. 2 questions through you to staff. The first is regarding graffiti removal and whether this program would contemplate a social enterprise component with, say, Blade Runners from NYSA or John Howard Society, like the litter pickup.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Hemmens, so at this point, the program does not have that as a condition or as criteria for evaluating grants. There's certainly, as I mentioned, there's the ability for council to review this annually, and it may be something, depending on what we learn through the first year, that council may wish to consider at that time. But at present, there is not such a criteria in the grant.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, the amount of funding we're giving this, if I know we probably don't have these figures, but off the top of your head, if this program were in place last year, would this have been fully subscribed? Like, is $50,000 in terms of downtown business support for vandalism, is that enough?
I think what I would say to that, Your Worship, is this program, our consultant recommended this program based on programs running out of similar sized communities that were encountering similar challenges in their downtown core. So in those cases, they found that the grant program was the appropriate funding level. But at this point, I would certainly say that there is definitely the need in the downtown. Whether it would be oversubscribed, it's a bit of a hard time, saying that for sure at this point. But
unfair question. If I may, I will just say, I would hope that as we go forward and we fund initiatives with city funding to do downtown cleanup, et cetera, that we would look at a social enterprise model like the one that is being run successfully through John Howard around litter pickup. And in terms of Councillor Armstrong's points, I completely agree that this is a worthwhile program for the entire city. However, I'm confident letting it kind of nest within the downtown and seeing how it goes. And then obviously, like any new program, we'll get feedback, we'll get a report. And if it seems that it's a well-utilized service, then I would absolutely contemplate expansion to the rest of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, a couple of comments. My first question, I think Mr. Lindsay answered because I was curious in the report that it didn't reference the DNBIA, but I think I heard you say, Mr. Lindsay, the reason is that the scope of the area extends beyond the actual Downtown Business Association area.
That's correct, Your Worship, through Councillor Thorpe. So there's the two active business improvement areas, which are both completely contained within the proposed area, but the subject area is larger than both of those BIAs and the other business, more informal business associations in the downtown. So it'd be all-encompassing, yes.
Thank you. And my second comment goes to Councillor Armstrong's comments, because that was my reaction as well to this. And I recognize that this stems from the Downtown Community Safety Action Plan. I think it's a great step, and I will support it. But I think it's fair comment to recognize that other businesses and other areas of town are also struggling with vandalism. And I especially can point to the North End car dealerships that had significant break-in and vandalism problems. So I would hope that the Chamber of Commerce and whoever is going to be administering this fund will in future look at expanding the program and taking other cases into account. But I will support this, at least as a first step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. I did ask this question before, but I wanted to expand on my question a bit through you to Mr. Lindsay. The question is around glass breakage, which quite often happens, of course, when there's a break-in or in vandalism. And when I used to own a building downtown, we were able to purchase a rider on our insurance for glass coverage, because the actual insurance companies would no longer insure glass. However, our agent was able to get a deal through one of the glass providers in town where we paid, I think it was $500 a year, and they would cover replacing the glass. So my question is, part of it says eligibility not for any expenses covered through insurance. And I guess it begs the question, if a building owner or business chose not to purchase the extra rider on their insurance, if it's still available, I'm assuming it is, does that mean that they would not be eligible for the glass, or that they would be?
Through your worship, I think that's a very good question. There's nothing specifically in the agreement that speaks to requiring a specific rider like what you're referring to. But what we are saying is that if it is covered by, as you mentioned, if it is covered by insurance, that it wouldn't be eligible for the grant. In those cases, because again, the maximum grant fund is $1,000 per incident, and the maximum you get is 2 per property in a calendar year, it would only probably cover a fraction of an overall event. But it is intended to be not cover anything that would otherwise be covered by insurance. But I'm sorry, I don't have a specific answer on the rider question.
Thank you.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. And through you, just in response to Councillor Turley, my experience with insurance is you may be able to buy glass coverage, but once you've had 1 or 2 claims, you won't be able to buy it anymore.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions for Mr. Lindsay. Councillor Hemmens, care to move the motion? Thank you very much. Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And any opposed? Councillor Armstrong, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Your Worship,
Yes.
Thank you. So before we move on, something has just come to my attention that should have been noted at the start of the meeting, so my apologies. But there are 3 bylaws on the agenda this evening for third reading that are carryovers from the September 29th public hearing. Items number 13C, zoning amendment bylaw 2022, number 4500.200, zoning amendment bylaw 2022, number 4500.204, and the land use contract discharge bylaw 2022, number 7355. Each of those has been to public hearing, and as you all know, at the close of public hearing, council cannot have any further information or hear any further information on these items. So therefore, the question period does not apply to those 3 items on the agenda. So the members of the public, unfortunately, can't ask questions tonight of council and or give you any new information. So the opportunity for the public to have done that was at the public hearing on September 29th, and that opportunity is now closed. So I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gurry?
Your Worship, not that I should be answering to hollering out in the gallery, I will. People were provided the opportunity to speak at the public hearing, and notices were provided. And any clarification that any members of the public might have, they are free to reach out to staff to ask those clarification questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it might provide some consternation for folks who are not familiar with the process, but we have to follow legal processes with respect to all of these applications. The next item is development permit application number DP 1272 and development variance permit application number DVP 419-6083 Garside Road. And Mr. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to ask Mr. Holm to introduce the next 2 items.
Mr. Holm, good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. This application is a report that actually considers 2 applications. I'll try and separate the details of those for you here. So this is for a property in Brannon Lake Estates, 6083 Garside Road. One request is for a variance to a watercourse setback from a wetland adjacent to Brannon Lake. And that application is for a development permit with a variance requested, a variance to the watercourse setback required from wetland adjacent to Brannon Lake. The other portion of the application, the other application is a development variance permit. The development variance permit is for side and rear yard setback variances, as well as fence height variance and lot coverage variances. Those are matters unrelated to the watercourse setback. The watercourse setback requires consideration of development permit guidelines and a variance considered through a development permit. Just a little bit of background. This is a property in Brannon Lake Estates. You can see it, thank you, on the overhead attachment B there, outlined in red. And you can see that it's adjacent to a park that's in green to the south of the property. And if you could please bring up attachment E, the site plan, that would be helpful to set the context as well. So the property shown overhead was created in 1992 through subdivision, and at that point in time complied with the regulations that were in place with regard to protecting riparian areas. You can see highlighted here on the plan overhead, the blue setback line indicating the extent of the dashed line in blue, indicating the extent of the watercourse setback in relation to the existing property. So this is an existing dwelling with an existing deck, fence, and yard area between the dwelling unit and Brannon Lake. And you can see on the lower edge of the screen the top of bank outlined, which is the wetland boundary that the setback is taken from. That boundary was not identified, did not exist in that location, or was not identified in 1992 when the property was created. Subsequently, in 1998, the dwelling unit was built on the property, and it's largely been in its current state since that time. The property owner has undertaken to reconstruct, replace a deck on the property, as well as a fence, and to do improvements to the rear yard of the property. And through that process has had to undertake building permit applications. Thank you. You can see the proposed improvements there, and requests and requires variances to allow that activity to occur. And this is largely reconstruction of existing structures on the property, and as well the property owner proposes, based on the advice of their qualified environmental professional, some off-site improvements within the watercourse setback to improve the situation there with regard to the condition of the setback. So a net improvement, although a slight improvement to the watercourse setback. So largely this is to address existing conditions. I'm happy to take any questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holm. Any questions for Mr. Holm? Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Your Worship, through you. So basically, this deck's been there with the past regulations, and they're just asking to put the pool in the same footprint, and nothing's really changed.
Thank you. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you very much. If there's no further questions, Councillor Hemmens, move the recommended motion.
I'll move it. Thank you.
Seconded Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None? Motion carried. Oh, by the way, I should have asked if there's anyone who wished to speak to it, but I didn't see anybody jump up, so. Thank you. The next is development permit application number DP 1253-2103 Bowen Road. Mr. Holm, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an application for property that's on the corner of Bowen and Meredith Road, and it's on the northwest corner. It's an irregularly shaped property, and actually, if you could bring up attachment B, the context map. Oh, that'll do there. That's perfect. Thank you. As you can see, it's an irregularly shaped property. Fronts on Bowen Road and Meredith as well. It has access from a lane that runs parallel to Bowen Road. And I'll explain what's proposed here. So the property is zoned Core 1, so it's a corridor zoned property, and it's designated residential corridor in the city plan. In the new official community plan, it's zoned, designated as a residential corridor, which is the policy supports use similar to what's proposed here. If you could bring up attachment D, site plan and parking, that'd be appreciated. Thank you. So what's proposed here is a 3-story residential rental apartment building, and in 3-story form with a rooftop amenity area. As I mentioned, access will be from the lane. If you could bring up the attachment E building elevations in detail, that would help to identify or demonstrate what's proposed there. So it's an irregularly shaped property, as I mentioned. As such, there are a number of variances that are proposed to help improve the siting of the building, as it's a prominent intersection on Bowen Road and Meredith. The requested variances include reductions to the minimum front yard, flanking side yard, as well as maximum fence height. A minor building height variance is requested from 14 meters to 14.95 meters, so under 1 meter in building height variance requested, as well as a variance setback to the setback for a refuse receptacle, and a very minor parking variance from 40 stalls to required to 39 stalls proposed, and an increase in the number of the percentage of small car stalls from 40 to 48% small car stalls. The application's been reviewed by the city's design advisory panel and supported through the design advisory panel with recommendations that have been addressed by the applicant, and the application is consistent with the applicable general development permit area design guidelines. So a good addition to housing stock on a major road in a prime location, and rental housing proposed, as I mentioned earlier. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holm. Any questions for Mr. Holm? Councillor Turley, please.
Through to Mr. Holm. I read through this and I didn't see any mention of bike storage. Is there anything for that?
Thank you. Through your worship, there is. I can place my fingers on it in just a second here. Yes, there is. All the bike storage is accommodated. Trying to find out where that is addressed, but yes, it is accommodated on site. The required bike storage is accommodated on site.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. No further questions. Councillor Hemmons moving the recommended motion. Seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is 12H, 235 Wallace Street, acceptance of project under revitalization tax exemption bylaw 2018, number 7261. Mr. Corson, good evening. Welcome. You're going to introduce this.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. So the next two items on your agenda pertain to the Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program. And you recall that this program exempts properties from the municipal portion of their taxes for up to 10 years based on the difference in value between the pre-development and post-development valuation. These two projects we're going to introduce to you are near the start of construction, and they need to be brought into the program prior to them picking up their building permit. So the first one is at 235 Wallace Street, which is the TELUS Living project. And this project has 195 units in a multifamily residential development with a value of over $75 million. Under this agreement, TELUS has to obtain their building permit before March of next year and has to be open and ready for occupancy by March 31st of 2026. Staff are recommending that Council approve the tax exemption for this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Corson? Not seeing any. Councillor Hemmons moves the recommended motion. Councillor Turley seconds. Any discussion? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Worship. Consistent with my previous position on this, I will be voting against it. It only serves the purpose of passing on increased profit to those building the buildings. It does not do anything other than that. Thanks.
Please, this is not, sorry, we do not show approval or disapproval of decisions of this council in that way in this chamber. Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor and those contrary, Councillor Brown, motion carries. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Councillor Gesselbrock as well.
Councillor Gesselbrock's opposed as well. The next is item I, 340 Campbell Street, amendment of project under revitalization tax exemption bylaw 2018, number 7261. And again, Mr. Corson, please.
Great, thanks, Your Worship. So 340 Campbell Street is the former Caledonia Medical Clinic. It's proposed to be a 163-unit multifamily development. The project has a value of around $30 million. The project was admitted into the tax exemption program in August 29th this year, and we're not able to meet the deadlines associated with a bonding issue. So we are seeking to amend the date now till April 30th of 2023 with a revised completion date of April 30th, 2025. Staff are recommending Council proceed with amending this tax exemption. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Corson? Not seeing any. Councillor Hemmons moves the recommended motion. Seconded Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? Councillor Armstrong, please.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Brown. The problem is that we've had this on the books as an incentive to get people to build there. So I think if we want to change this, that's something the next council should look at. And I would certainly be prepared to as Councillor Brown said, to waive it. But for me, because this is the reason people are building there is because of that incentive, I think at this time, from my perspective, it's not the time to say no, but would definitely welcome this discussion at the next council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor and those opposed, Councillors Gesselbrock and Brown, thank you. Motion carries. On to bylaws. The first is 13A, zoning amendment bylaw 2020 number 4500.169. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2020 number 4500.169 to rezone portions of 3500 Rock City Road from low-density residential R6 to medium-density residential R8 with site-specific floor area ratio be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is 13B, zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.198. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.198 to rezone 5707 Lost Lake Road from single dwelling residential R1 to low density residential R6 to allow multifamily residential development be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? Opposed, Councillor Brown. Motion carries. Thank you. And the next is zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.200.
Thank you. I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.200 to rezone 2086 and 2090 East Wellington Road from rural resource AR1 to high-tech industrial I3 with an additional site-specific use to allow a proposed data center past third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Do we speak to it on this one? Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to speak to this one. I know there's been a lot of concern in the community around this, and there's been a range of reasons. In terms of the loss of agricultural land, I don't feel that strongly that that land is as viable for that type of use, and so that's not as big a concern for me. The data centers, yeah, it's amazing the growth and need around data centers around the world. I think now, like, the amount of energy that they use is, as much that Great Britain uses, and there's also need to have them running on clean energy. And so I think a lot of places, BC, with it running on hydro, there's more and more demand for these. I think that there are some issues just around around our electrical grid, but the biggest one is just how these places are cooled, and I don't think that there's been enough information presented on the water usage, and I don't think I can make a decision on this particular rezoning and this permitted use for a data center. Just a need to what's the impact on our water, especially when we're like the droughts that we're experiencing and that. I think, potential solution would be looking at a covenant, and I think there's been concerns raised by the community around the sound from these facilities, and I know other communities across Canada and the US and that have had issues around sound because of the cooling systems, and because there's such a huge demand for these places, the technology is always changing and improving, and now with water-cooled systems, they are a lot quieter, and I appreciate staff putting the covenant in around, setting the limit on sound. And so I think that issue can be taken care of, but I'm not opposed to looking at data centers, but just this one here, I think there still needs to be some more information around water usage, so I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
A question through to staff, please. When we look at the project, they were looking for 122 parking spots, and I know people are going to be shocked, but if they're only having 20 people on site, do we really need to have that many parking spots? And that could maybe change the way the building design has gone, which would lessen some of the noise impact.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. For this specific use, there isn't anything defined specifically in the parking bylaw. The closest approximate use is warehouse use. So we have been utilizing that to calculate the parking requirements. Should at the development permit stage, the applicant determine that maybe they do require less parking, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but that we could consider a parking variance at that time. But for the purpose of rezoning, they have demonstrated that they can meet the parking requirements.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be voting in favor of this. It is zoned light industrial, and there's other businesses that would be a lot higher. It is needed. We're going to have to face those facts. People may not like them, but looking at the plan and my concerns can be addressed at the DP time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I'm also going to vote in favor of this thing. Today is a day of first. Councillor Turley's asking about bike storage, and Councillor Armstrong's asking to reduce parking. I'm floored and honored to be part of all this. But I think my main concern here is that this has, in the official community plan, this is an industrial park, and it has been that way for many, many years. And so when I was at an open house a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a developer, and he commented on the fact that he looks at Nanaimo as being very stable, and not only a stable council, but making good decisions. And for us to not approve this would basically be going against our official community plan, which we've all voted for just recently, except for somebody. So to me, we have to show that the development community that if they choose to follow our rules, right, then it would be, it's favorable, they'll get this, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's a given 100%, but in this particular case, this is an industrial area. It always was going to be industrial area, and this is an industrial project. So to me, reason I voted against deferring it last time is I didn't think that this was going to be a decision that required a lot more thinking. It was just a straightforward, this is what's in the official community plan. If I may wax poetically for the future, this is one of the reasons why sometimes that we should be looking at the possibility of not having public hearings when a rezoning is within the official community plan. So that's, I may not get elected if I keep going this way, but so that was my point. That's why I'm supporting this thing, and that's why we'll go thing in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm also going to support this for a few reasons. The first, very similar to Councillor Bonner's, this is designated as light industrial, and it has been for years, and so the homeowners around this area are aware of that. In terms of the food production, there isn't going to be food production on this land. In no plan is there food production on this land, so it's not either or. And the final piece, the one I found, well, no, there was another piece in there, and that's about the road configuration around the bigger development, pardon me, but I had those questions answered. The piece about the sound, I find quite compelling. I live a couple blocks from the mill on Halliburton. I get that. I heard from the proponent that they're going to work at every stage to make sure that the decibel readings are below what is required, and I found that appealing. So do I want a data center? Probably not. Does this align with our plans? And is that our job, to approve developments that align with our plans? Absolutely. So I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers? If not, I'm going to comment on this one because I appreciate that it has aroused a controversy in the neighborhood amongst several people, including some who believe this is ALR land and has agricultural value, others concerned about data and electricity and all kinds of things. But as Councillor Bonner has pointed out, and given the official community plan and the designation for this property for a very long time, this is an appropriate use. And I appreciate that as neighborhoods change and people become acquainted with these matters because they haven't bothered to look or consider it, and I don't say that in a critical way, but simply that's what most of us do. I can't tell you that when Sharon and I bought our house 39 years ago, we considered the fact that it was going to be surrounded potentially by a multi-residential project just down the road on the corner that is now filled with patio homes and townhouses. It is the nature of the beast. And in the circumstances, Councillor Bonner is quite correct. When people invest in our community and provide either opportunities for employment or for accommodation by way of housing, they have not a right in the sense of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but they have a reasonable expectation, please, I'm sorry, if you want to sit on this side of the chamber, you're welcome to do so. We had an election. This is still the council of the day, and I'm sorry, we are not going back to the pre-2018 regime. People who invest are entitled to have reasonable expectations met around appropriate land use. This happens to fall within that, and therefore I will be voting in favor. If there's anyone else who wishes to speak, please. I'm sorry, quiet. Quiet. Any further speakers? All those in favor of the motion and those opposed, Councillors Gesselbrock, Councillor Gesselbrock. Thank you. Sir, perhaps we can take a minute to those who wish to speak to go outside the chamber where they can discuss this amongst themselves.
Was there an environmental assessment study done? Where's the environmental studies? Just follow your agenda. We're in a drought and you're going to use 16,000 gallons a day. Why are you allowing the Chinese to snoop on us? Okay, by Trump. Yeah. Your retirement is going to play to your friend on you. Well, that's going to be a lawyer. You're going to live well in hell.
All right. On to item D, zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.204. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.204 to rezone 444, 450, and 500 Comox Road, 55 Mill Street, and 1 Terminal Avenue from medium-density residential R8 and Gateway DT12 to Comprehensive Development District Zone 7, CD7, and to amend the CD7 zone with new regulations to facilitate a mixed-use development and subdivision past third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. Anyone wish to speak to this? I'm going to, for one reason only. Concerns have been raised by Snuneymuxw First Nation with respect to this matter, and that material is public and available and is presented to Council, and I appreciate their concerns and their comments about what they believe is a lack of consultation and discussion around this. But as I've tried to remind everyone on various occasions in other matters, particularly around healthcare, addiction treatment, and others, our jurisdiction does not extend to land claims, UNDRIP, title to property, and things of that nature in the ordinary sense. We are entitled at law to deal with zoning and development permits and things of that nature, and that is our obligation as members of Council. And I appreciate that if Snuneymuxw has claims that they believe are legitimate, there are appropriate avenues for them to pursue them. It is not either appropriate nor our obligation nor responsible of us to make decisions based on the concerns that are raised. And in these circumstances, as many in this community have noticed, when you come into what is essentially our downtown and you come over the Pearson Bridge, on the left you have the beauties of Sutton Maffeo Sutton Park. And on the right, we have a piece of property that has cried out for redevelopment for a very long time. What is before us is consistent with the way this property has been zoned in the past, and is consistent, and the proposal, I think, is consistent with the best interest of the community. So I have no hesitation in supporting this tonight. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to it? If not, all those in favor and any opposed, none, motion carries. The next is Land Use Contract Discharge Bylaw 2022, number 7355. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Land Use Contract Discharge Bylaw 2022, number 7355, to discharge an existing land use contract from the property title of 500 Comox Road pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor, any opposed, none, motion carries. The next is item F, City of Nanaimo Housing Agreement Bylaw 2022, number 7357. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Housing Agreement Bylaw 2022, number 7357, to secure the terms and conditions of occupancy for a residential shelter at 3059 Glen Eagle Crescent be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor, any opposed, none, motion carries. Councillor Bonner, sorry.
Item, I had to step out on that, so I would think as my last official anything here, that I would maintain my stellar performance of excuse myself from this vote. And I'm going to go stand and I'm going to go over there.
Councillor Bonner, always a gentleman, always full of integrity and making a wise decision tonight. Councillor Hemmens, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Property Tax Exemption Bylaw 2022, number 7358, a bylaw to exempt certain land and buildings from taxation, be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Mr. Sims, if you can get Councillor Bonner back in. Councillor Bonner. Ms. Gurry, I don't believe we have any notices of motion. Do we have any other business to transact tonight? I don't believe so. And question period sheet?
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Congratulations, Mayor Krogh and the 5 councillors that won in the election, and good luck to the 3 councillors that are moving on. First, I'd like to ask actually 2 questions. First off, just regarding not 4,500, 200, but regarding the question period. In bylaw 2018-7272, it does not suggest that anybody cannot ask questions about a current thing on the agenda of the day, and that is a current thing on the agenda. So can I be illuminated on the rule that suggests that people cannot ask a question on a current, in the bylaw, it does not suggest that, so.
Councillor Armstrong.
I can answer that for you because there's legislation under public hearings which supersede our bylaw. And once a public hearing is closed, we cannot take any more new information, period.
How come it doesn't say that in the bylaw then? In this 2018-727 question period?
Because that bylaw is for other items other than a public hearing.
Yes.
I'll let Ms. Gurry take it further.
It just doesn't say, it says anything that's discussed at the actual city council meeting. It doesn't suggest anything that's in third reading.
But you have to read the public hearing laws, which supersede. But Ms. Gurry will answer.
Ms. Gurry, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship. So, yes, Councillor Armstrong is correct. There is public hearing legislation and law that would supersede any bylaw, but it is actually mentioned in our bylaw under what you can and cannot speak to under the delegations and speaking to items on the agenda. There's a list of items you can't speak to, and public hearing matters are and third reading of bylaws that have been to public hearing are one of the items you can't speak to. I can get you that page number and send it to you, Mr. Ainsley.
I looked it up online. It didn't say in the delegation. I looked up the question period specifically of that bylaw, and it does not suggest
Yeah.
that. I understand what you're saying in terms of you can't do anything else. I'm just saying, this is the people's building, right? So people came here to talk, and maybe some of it was not the most appropriate, but you know what I'm saying? Okay, secondly, I would just want to address what you guys just talked about in terms of the Comox Road terminal building. The residents that are going to be displaced, is there any way or provisions of them?
Sorry, you're asking a question, as Ms. Curry pointed out. We cannot comment further on, you're making reference to item 13D, which is zoning amendment bylaw 2022 number 4500.204. I'm sorry, but we can't
speak to if the
respond.
tenants are going to get
Could refer you
remunerated,
to
or?
refer you to the minutes, and you'll see the answer to your question in the minutes.
Yes, so thank you, Your Worship and Councillor Armstrong. It would be available in the minutes, what was spoken to in respect to that, the minutes from the public hearing, as well as any clarification could also be directed to staff as well, because that was another public hearing item that cannot be discussed.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, thank you very much. Councillor Martman moves for the last time for adjournment, seconded by Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.